What is up, guys? So, in the last couple of weeks, there's actually been something very exciting going on in my Discord server. I decided to make a custom card contest, the rules of which are simple. You guys could submit individual cards or full sets, and there would be 10 different award categories that each card could be nominated for, with me going through the nominations and choosing specifically the best of the best to give each individual award for. You guys submitted over 1,300 cards in total, which is why it took multiple weeks to get this all done. And this was also partly because a ton of the dedicated custom card community over at r/custom LOR, shout out to that subreddit, you guys should all check it out, got involved, and it ended up becoming a much bigger thing than initially intended. Now, I had so much fun on my Twitch stream going through all of these nominations with you guys and picking the awards that I've decided I'm actually going to start doing this every 2 months. It's basically going to follow the kind of like Runeterra seasonal cadence, and I'll be doing these custom card contests. More details on that and how you can join in later ones at the end of the video. So without further ado, let's get into it. The 10 awards for the custom card contest. So these cards are being rated by a variety of factors, mostly 5 major ones, those being printability, balance, formatting, creativity, and adherence to flavor or lore, which is of course really important. Now, depending on the category, these ones might be weighted a little bit differently, but we're gonna start off with the first category, Best Follower Award. The winner of Best Follower is Blaring Hornblower by Nuji. And this is a really cool concept. It's actually part of an Orin set that Nuji designed, and it's really cool. It's a 2-mana 3/2 Freljord card that simply says, when I'm summoned, move the most expensive ally you can afford next round to the top of your deck. So if you play at round 5, it'll put a 6-mana unit on top of your deck, right? And of course, if it's tied for multiple 6-mana units, it'll pick a random one. Despite being part of a high synergy set, this is also just a really standalone design that works pretty well. It's a really nice ability to tutor a specific card. If you want to kind of build your deck in a way, you're gonna have to time exactly when you play Blaring Hornblower, and sometimes it can kind of brick out your hands. There's a lot of cases where you won't feel like you can play it because you're trying to top deck a certain thing, which it won't allow you to do. So a really simple card, but one with a ton of nuance in terms of deck building angles, as well as in terms of like how you have to think about playing it out. Your opponent has some angles to read your hands off of it. There's just a lot going on with this simple design. And I gotta say, I really love the idea of soft tutors that have the power of being able to get you what you want in a game, but something that doesn't have, is balanced around a deck building cost, really, right? And you're gonna have to design your deck in a specific way if you want Hornblower to pull you a specific card. All right, next up, we've got the Best Champion Award. Now, this award is going to go to Samira by After Dusk. And this is actually a really, really cool design for a champion. So it's a little complicated. Samira is a 4-mana 3/3 Noxus card. When you play her, she gains a variable buff based on the reputation triggers, leveling up after you've dealt 10 damage. And depending on how many reputation triggers, she'll gain different benefits. At 1 reputation trigger, she'll gain 2 attack, so she'll be a 5/3 and able to get you more reputations. At 2, she'll gain 2/2, so she'll be a 5/5. At 3 reputation triggers, she'll be a 5/5 Overwhelm. She'll have Overwhelm for free. And at 4, if you've activated Reputation, she'll be able to have Quick Attack as well. So she'll be a 4-mana 5/5 Overwhelm Quick Attack, which sounds really powerful, but Reputation is currently lacking a payoff, and it would come down quite a bit later in the game. You can't really activate Reputation by turn 4 for the curve out. Now, when Samira levels up after having dealt 10 damage, her specifically, she gains a new ability, which is every time you attack, she will deal 1 damage to all battling enemies. So basically like a Death Lotus effect on the stack when she attacks, this Inferno trigger. And her champ spell is the 4-mana Samira's Flare. An ally and an enemy strike each other. Reputation, an ally strikes an enemy instead. So it's sort of like a more expensive single combat that has the flexibility of being sort of like an alt bloody business if you've triggered Reputation. Now, I just found this to be really cool design. Overall, this is very faithful with how Samira works in League with her idea of a combo that you have to upkeep. It sort of ties that with the idea of Reputation, giving you, ways of being able to increase her combo. And it's a bit of a bailout that Reputation kind of needs as an archetype right now. I think one of the most important aspects of card design isn't the idea of cards that are just like interesting or cool, but stuff that specifically solves problems within the context of the current card pool. And I'm going to be giving a lot of credit to cards that take existing archetypes and empower them in very significant ways. Samira does that pretty excellently with the Reputation archetype. And speaking of which, next up, the third category, Best Landmark, we've got Bunny Glade, submitted by Winter. Now, Bunny Glade is a really cool concept. It's a 2-mana Ionian landmark, and when it gets summoned or around start, if you have the attack token, summon an Adorable Spirit. And the Adorable Spirit is just a token 0-mana 0/1 Challenger Ephemeral. So sort of like Flame Chompers a little bit, except it's ephemeral. Now, this is really cool for a few reasons, but mostly this is just a way of trying to help the Lulu or support archetype. And it's doing so in a pretty great way. It's a 2-drop landmark, which is cool, you know, being able to have like more landmarks that do things immediately when they're played. And it's a great buff target for stuff like Lulu, for stuff like Pix. There's a lot of things you can do with this little spirit. In addition to that, it's also ephemeral, which means that maybe with a more expanded card pool, I could see ways of going back to like Ephemeral Shadow Isles Ionia, probably not just off the back of this one card, but something that it would lean the card pool a little bit more specifically towards the idea of, oh, huh, you know, what if we were going back to Ionia Ephemerals? Because Ionia also has a lot of Ephemeral synergy cards that don't really do anything. Overall, it's a simple but very effective concept that I'd be happy if something like this existed in the game. All right, next up, we've got the Best Spell category, and this one's gonna go to Favored Timeline by Banana Dragons. A very simple concept. It's a 3-mana Shurima spell, fast speed, and it simply says resolve a fast spell, slow spell, or skill. That's it. So it's a very, very convoluted way, well, simple, but it's a way to basically get your spell to resolve before your opponent's spell. It can work in some ways kind of like a deny, because if your opponent tries to play a spell to stop your spell, you can play Favored Timeline after that and basically mess that up, right? You stop their counter to your spell, right? Now, a couple of caveats with this one. It would need to be balance tweaked. At 3 mana, this ability is not quite worth it because it's basically a more situational deny. But I really, really love the concept of this card. It's really cool. I think it fits Shurima's idea of time manipulation very well. And it can lead to some really cool and interesting interactions. And keep in mind, balance is just one of the factors that I'm weighing for, right? Like, there will be some cases where cards will have really cool designs, even though they'll need some numbers tweaks, and I'll still really be able to appreciate the designs and give them boosts based on that. All right, next up, we've got the Most Flavorful award. Most Flavorful is going to go to Kane and Rost, submitted by Brody. And this is a really cool concept. So this happens to be a dual region card. It's Ionia or Shurima. You can play it in either, but that's not the focus. Kane is a 3-mana 3/3 elusive Challenger. So it's got the same Yusari thing of having both elusive and Challenger, which seems kind of weird, right? But it will level up depending on exactly what you do. If you strike the Nexus 2 times, then he levels up into Shadow Assassin Kane. And if you kill 2 units with him via his Challenger or blocking, then he'll level up into Rost. Now, Rost is a 3-mana 3/5, so he basically gains 2 health. And when you kill a unit with him, you fully heal and grant me +2/+1. And he loses elusive though. So basically you're gaining health on this level up, you're keeping Challenger but losing elusive, and you're getting a strong unit that's going to be permanently buffing itself every time it's killing a unit while healing itself. Sort of like a pretty scary version of Braum. Then his alternate form is Shadow Assassin Kane. Instead of gaining 2 health, this one gains 2 attack, loses Challenger, and the Nexus Strike, every time he Nexus strikes, he gains Spell Shield and +2/+0. So it's a really cool idea of Kane, of course, Kane in League of Legends having this dual form and being able to kind of like choose one form to go with depending on how you play him. Hits that really, really well. The idea of just kind of like taking the concept of Yusari and turning it into something that actually kind of like makes sense and gives you that proper modality is really cool. So this is gonna win the Most Flavorful design. Next up, we've got Best Keyword Award, and this one's gonna go to Drown by Owen Eli. Now, this is an interesting one. I'll have to show a couple of these cards so that you'll understand how it works. Now, these cards themselves are really cool, but the award here is just for the keyword. Drown is a keyword that states drowned units die when struck or targeted. So basically, if you give something drown, it's kind of like a mark for death. when it gets struck or when it gets targeted with anything, it just dies, which is really cool. I mean, it's a nice way of having like a Bilgewater control element, because Drown is meant to be in this, you know, kind of like set the way it's released. It's kind of like Bilgewater with some Targon tendencies. And the idea behind Drown and how it's implemented in this case is with Illaoi's tentacles, which are just like randomly striking things. The tentacles aren't really the focus, but just the idea of being able to have this way of representing like a Bilgewater control archetype by marking some things. Like, it just fits really well with like the flavor of Bilgewater as well, and just like, you know, gives them a separate aspect of their identity. Really, really cool. And I think it would be a great direction to actually have, you know, maybe Illaoi work in a way sort of similar to this, where you do just like summon tentacles, and they're kind of like, you know, once you've marked something for drowning, the tentacle will just kill it with its tiny strike. That's a really good implementation of Illaoi. All right, next up, we've got the best rework category. This one's a little bit special. It's not a fully custom card, it's a rework to a pre-existing card. The winner of the best rework category is gonna go to Dusk Rider by Gnome. And it's a pretty simple thing. It's nothing crazy. It's just a 5 mana 4/3 fearsome with Nightfall, summon an exact copy of me, granted ephemeral. It's pretty neat. It's overall, I mean, a lot better than current Dusk Rider. It's doing exactly, you know, what the 5-drop from Nightfall kind of wants to do. And most importantly, because you're not only getting an extra fearsome attack, it's synergizing with how Nocturne works, because the 2 Nightfall attackers, keep in mind the ephemeral copy of Dusk Rider counts as a Nightfall attacker for Nocturne, so it will be able to, you know, be 2 level triggers for Nocturne. It's also fearsome, so it kind of plays into the idea of trying to level up Nocturne and trying to get the fearsome win condition. It's just a really cool finisher for Nightfall. It's nothing really crazy, but it doesn't have to be. It's a really simple but effective solution that will make Dusk Rider just make quite a bit more sense. Next up, we've got the best art category, and this one's going to go by Sorry No Art by the Quan Dynasty. Now, this is a just absolute masterpiece. I'm very serious. I love this art. There's so many subtle decisions about this that make it just genius art. Obviously, you know, it's a picture of the screen being taken with a phone, and it's just super pixelated, slight angle to it. And just the fact that you can see the literal like paint header at the top is amazing. You start to take in more details, and you notice there's like a frowny face that's partially hidden by the text, so you don't see it at first, but it's something that you'll only notice if you look a little bit deeper into the art. It has a lot of qualities of just like high tier art. Someone actually, Daquan Dynasty, who made this, put some real effort into this. Like, you can tell this wasn't just accidental. All these decisions are on purpose. There's a very clear motif of just like the very just kind of like jank nature of how this is all laid out. But although you can see the immediate things that catch the eye at the front, the more you look at it, the more there is a story to tell. This is actually a masterpiece. Next up, we've got the worst design category. This is one that some people were specifically trying to win with their submissions, but the winner is gonna be Temu, who submitted, well, these monstrosities you see before you. Now, this guy knew exactly what category he was aiming for when he submitted these cards. So we're gonna start with Ionian Walkway, which at the start of the game, it's an Ionian 1-mana card. You draw it if all your cards are Ionian and you have no champions. And then once you play it, next turn, it summons a Buried Sun Disk, and you get the random Ascendant Champions. So basically, it's a way of playing Mono Shrima without actually playing Shrima. You can play Mono Shrima as a Mono Ionia deck. Next card is Kusho, the Radiant Fisherman. Oh yeah, this is a set. And this is another Ionian card meant to be paired. When you toss, advance your Buried Sun Disk 1 round. And when you play it, it tosses too. So this is great. Every time you're tossing cards, your Buried Sun Disk is advancing, which, I mean, hey, that's really cool. It just gives you more angles to be able to advance your Sun Disk. Then we've got Definitely Not a Bilgewater Bay, a 3-mana Ionia landmark, which if you've cast 2 spells last round, it tosses 1 twice. If you're deep, it creates a random sea monster in hand, and then it gets destroyed and you become enlightened. So basically, it gives you a way to combine the idea with deep with the idea of enlightenment with the idea of sun discs or mono Shrima, and you run them without running any Shrima cards or even any Bilgewater cards for that matter. And then finally, we've got Insightful Monstrosity, which when you play this 6-mana 5/5 sea monster, it creates a jettison in hand. If he has deep already, creates an Inside of Ages on player on start, and when you get enlightened, Insightful Monstrosity gets deep which will trigger because you will have the definitely not a Bilgewater Bay, which will allow you to become enlightened once you're deep. Honestly, these cards were just a blast to run through. We had a good laugh. It actually made me laugh harder than I've laughed in a while. And honestly, I gotta say, even though it's just a complete meme concept, the idea of doing something like allowing you to reach one condition, in this case enlightenment, by using a different condition, in this case deep, is actually kind of a cool design concept that I feel like if implemented exactly right, maybe in very different ways, maybe with very different keywords or concepts, could actually be kind of interesting. Just like basically saying, oh, I'm going to run this deck, but I'm going to do it in this way instead. And finally, we are going to get to the last and final award. Award number 10, the winner of the best overall set. Now, this is kind of the big one. This is like, because the contest started as like a set submission, and this is kind of the overall winner of the contest. And this one is gonna go to Irumater Nuji and his Orin set, which I mentioned before. This was where Blaring Hornblower was from, but take a look at this because this is actually a real treat. So there's a lot to talk about because, I mean, it's an entire little set of cards. Basically, here's how it works. Orin is a 3-mana 2/3 tough, sort of similar to Lysandra. Every time the round ends, you're granting the top ally in your deck +1/+1 and tough. And once you've summoned 5 or more buffed units, Orin will level up and create a lava elemental on top of your deck. Now, when your Orin is leveled, his round end, instead of giving +1/+1, will double the power and health of the top ally in your deck. So whatever you're top decking, which is really cool. And this will scale off of itself, presumably if you're like drawing a spell, you're redoubling it, which sounds really powerful, but take note of how tricky Orin is to actually level. So basically the idea here is it is a Freljord kind of like deck buff archetype. It's taking cards like Omenhawk, cards like Shared Spoils, and cards like Avros and Hearthguard, and turning them into support cards for this archetype of buffing the cards on top of your deck and trying to get payoff of keeping Orin alive, keeping buffing the cards on top of your deck, and just kind of like top decking your card every single time. But it's actually really well made. And while this, I'm sure at first this looks really strong, it's important to keep in mind how much Orin is kind of like your win condition with this deck. Like it would almost be your only win condition. And he's pretty hard to level up and protect. Summoning 5+ units that are buffed is very difficult. So it would be good in like this sort of like out grindy kinds of matchups, but would still be able to fail a lot of other matchups. Now, his champ spell is Orin's Living Forge, which grants the top 2 allies of your deck +2/+1. If the top unit was already buffed, draw it. So this is a great follow-up to something like, Omenhawk. This one's very powerful card, and it's his champ spell as well. Blacksmith Apprentice is a 1-drop, 1-mana 1/2. When I'm summoned, grant the top 2 allies in your deck tough. I love this. It's just cool. It's sort of similar to Omenhawk. In a lot of ways, tough is not going to be as good as the +1/+1. In fact, it almost never will. There's a lot of draws where tough will be useless, especially if you're drawing a unit that already has tough. So it has 1 extra point of health compared to Omenhawk. It just ends up making sense, and it's something that would probably see play in this archetype specifically. Next up, we've got the Blaring Hornblower, which we mentioned before. Really cool design. I love this as a standalone card, but it also makes a lot of sense with this set. We can think about how we're deck building with Orin, right? There's so many cool ways we can use Blaring Hornblower to set up combos, but in a very limited sense. Like we can only do it on specific turns. It will lead to like clunky committal, like turn 4, turn 5 turns where you're playing a few things a few like cheap units at the same time just to set up something for next turn, which you're getting a big payoff, but that's not the kind of thing you want to be doing in Runeterra in general. So it won't be as like powerful as it seems. It's just going to be like a way to just put value into next turn. Then we've got Troll Forger, 4-mana 3/3. When you've played it, grants the top ally in your deck regen and +0/+4. If it was already buffed, draw it. So you can kind of compare this to like Avros and Outriders, except, with a different buff. This one is, of course, pretty good as well. I could see an argument for a couple of things in the set needing like minor balance tweaks, but I think it's less than it seems. And also, the design of the set is really cool. It's really cohesive. And most of these cards are really well thought out, right? Like they all kind of like fit together in a way that like you can imagine this basically being an actual archetype in the game. And it's literally like, apart from maybe a couple numbers tweaks at most, it's extremely imaginable. The last card here is Vicious Pillager, which I love. 5-mana 5/4 Overwhelm, and when you Nexus Strike, which Overwhelm counts for, you're creating a Shared Spoils that costs 0 in hand. also very cool. It's just a way of making shard spoils make a bit more sense. You're not going to main deck it, but getting it off this card is sweet. It's really flavorful. It's like Vicious Pillager. It's like when you Nexus Strike, you're pillaging, you're getting your shard spoils. So it all ends up working well. I love this set. And of course, I should mention the lava elemental that you're getting when you're leveling up your Orin gives all allies in your deck Overwhelm, which is pretty strong, but at that point in the game, I should hope you're trying to close it out. So congratulations again to Irumator and winning both the best follower as well as best overall set awards for my first ever custom card contest. So like I said, this is a project that started kind of small. It wasn't at the start meant to be this whole thing, but I really enjoyed it. And a lot of you guys were saying how much fun you had watching the streams and submitting your own cards. So I've decided to make this a bi-monthly thing, or once every 2 months. Bi-monthly is just really confusing. Yeah, once every 2 months. It's gonna basically fall into the seasonal cadence because the season of Runeterra is once every 2 months, and it's gonna be something like 2 months from now when I'll be doing the next one. Now, I think this is kind of perfect timing. My plan is to make these kind of like an ongoing event in the preceding weeks, right before the seasonal itself, the seasonal qualies. So like, basically it'll be, you know, right before the seasonal qualies, and that's also before the new cards are getting revealed. So it's kind of the perfect timing when there's not a lot happening in the game. People are kind of bored of the patch. Seasonals are just around the corner but not happening yet. And I think it's the perfect time to do these bi-monthly custom card competitions. So I'm going to be thinking about tweaks that I might want to make to the ones moving forward, because definitely a few things I could have done a little bit differently in terms of stuff like maybe changing around the award categories, or maybe just like mixing it up. You know, there's a lot of ways I can tweak this format to maybe streamline it more for future things. Let me know, by the way, if you guys have any ideas for ways I can tweak this system, or for ways that would be more fun for you guys to watch or for you guys to participate in. And I'm actually seriously, I'm very curious in your guys's input on this matter. I'm not just doing that YouTuber thing where it's like, oh yeah, type in the comments. No, I'm literally I actually want to know, because I'm looking for ideas of how to make this a better series. This has all just kind of happened so fast. I had a lot of fun with it, but now for the next month or two, I'm gonna have to think like, you know, how do I need to kind of set this up moving forward? So if you want to be notified about future events or about, you know, any announcements I might have regarding them, or if you just want to hang out, come join the Discord. I'll put the link in the pinned comment. And the Discord is where these competitions are being ran through. So if you want to participate, that's where it'll be. Check it out. Come hang out with us. It's a lot of fun. And also, to sweeten the pot just a little bit, I've decided that I have so much fun doing these. I'm actually going to start putting down a cash prize. It's probably not going to be like, you know, a crazy amount or anything like that. I haven't figured out the specifics, but some kind of cash prize for these contests. I think it'll just, you know, be a lot more fun to at least have something, you know. So that's about all I got. I'm looking forward to doing another one of these in about 2 months for the next event. And hopefully you guys will be interested in joining in and participating. It's quite a bit of fun. All right, guys, that's it for me, and I'll see you guys next time.